Season's greetings and salutations, fuckers. Today we have a listener question, which is a very common one in the community. They say, I think my partner has CPTSD and it's ruining our relationship. How do I get them to seek treatment? Of course, there was a lot of extra information included, and we might tackle that in another episode posted for subscribers. But let's start with this very common, simple form of the question first, because we're going to find out it's not so simple after all. In fact, if you are new to CPTSD learnin, you're going to fucking hate my answer. Here we go. So, there are actually three distinct points in this question that need attention. Let's go through them. First of all, I think my partner, only my partner, has CPTSD. Unfortunately, it doesn't really work this way. If they have CPTSD, the chances are astronomically high that you also have unhealed trauma. Maybe you would not qualify for a complex PTSD diagnosis, but there's probably some relational trauma inside of you as well. Otherwise, the relationship simply never would have gotten off the ground. We need kind of corresponding puzzle pieces or relational patterns for things to work. Second point, their CPTSD is ruining our relationship. It also doesn't work this way. There is never an issue from one party that is wholly responsible for ruining the relationship. The relationship exists, period, because there are two persons agreeing to it. So, relationships are the interplay between two brains, as are the relationship problems. And thirdly, how do I get them to seek treatment? It again just doesn't fucking work this way. You cannot make anyone do anything, especially therapy. So let's roll through each of these points in more detail. First of all, I think my partner has CPTSD. Maybe they do. And also, y'all wouldn't have synced up if you weren't also operating a relationally traumatized brain. I'm sorry. To put it super simply, a healthy brain relating over time to a traumatized brain is like oil and water. They do not understand each other, they don't really mix, and it leads to a repulsion. A traumatized brain relating to another traumatized brain is like peanut butter and jelly a good majority of the time. They fit in a complementary way, and there's this tasty magnetism, which is why we end up in kind of fucked up relationships pretty often. So, if you think your partner has CPTSD, you probably have trauma too, which is not to say that your traumas are the same or have the same presentation. If the traumas were the same, the brains would likely be very triggered by each other or by the families of each other. And that leads to throwing a lot of wrenches into the partnership fairly early on, generally, unless it's a pretty distant or casual one. But once residing together in the household circumstance, trauma will be unleashed. We are attracted to corresponding brains, and that usually means that a characteristic of our partner balances out a characteristic of us. So, in the case of relational trauma, often one person's trauma adaptations or responses neutralize or act as corrective factors to the other person's trauma adaptations or learned responses or patterns, and vice versa. Again, corresponding puzzle pieces. So here's the easiest example. One person grew up in a screaming household, and one person grew up in a silent household. This comforts the party from the scream house who assesses that their silent partner is safe because they're different than what they grew to fear growing up. And the party from the silent house probably believes, to some extent, maybe unconsciously, that they are saving the person from the more obviously conflictual upbringing by their not screaming tendencies. But in reality, neither house was necessarily healthy. The silent household was probably built on repression and stonewalling, which is a whole different brand of trauma. P.S. The saving intention is another sign of relational trauma. It's white knighting. So, long story short, if you got along well enough with a CPTSDer to form and maintain a serious relationship, you probably have unknown trauma as well, which has led to these corresponding relational patterns between you. But your trauma probably will not look the same. And there's a good chance that you both believe your less obviously traumatized upbringing was the good one, slash, you are fine. I speak from personal experience and a lot of observation. Next point you're going to hate. Their CPTSD is ruining our relationship. False. Your brains interacting with each other are ruining the relationship. You are one half of 2 out of 2 who are required for this relationship. If you have unhealed or unknown trauma, and so do they, we're talking about survival brain battling survival brain and nobody realizing it. Example. One brain insisting you are the problem, it's your CPTSD that is the issue, and claiming complete innocence. Hello, things that the supposedly traumatized partner probably heard in their childhood, triggering the shit out of them. I bet they are used to being the problem while someone else has absolutely no part in the issues. But do they necessarily consciously know that this is triggering to them? No. And meanwhile, your assertion that they are the problem is also probably an artifact of trauma. It's some oversimplified black and white thinking going on there. In other words, neither brain knows what it is doing to the other, or how it's being affected by the other, or why it does the shit that it do in return. So it's one big clusterfuck of mutual trauma adaptations and reactions, with one party's being perhaps less extreme or distressed. So therefore, it appears as though that brain isn't the problem. When in fact, the brain causing the majority of the damage might be the so called normal one. The brain that's instigating the upset can pretty easily be mislabeled as not the issue because, yeah, it isn't reacting to its own destructive behaviors. In a way, it is the brain that is in control. So the brain that is less out of control because it is being triggered is going to seem as though it is the problematic one. Now, I am not saying that you are the problem. I do not know you. And this is a two-party party. I'm just relaying information about how our perceptions can be misleading. Next point that you're also, again, going to hate. How do I get them to seek treatment? You fucking can't. Erase those words from your mind, every person who is watching or listening to this. Sorry, though, again. Trying to make someone get psychological help, point number one, is impossible and ineffectual at best. It is dangerous at worst. And point number two, you can't make anyone do anything. So, point number one, there are several sub points. We'll go through them. Trying to make someone get psychological help is impossible and ineffectual at best. Let's start there. Straight up, you cannot make them go. Secondly, you cannot make them actively participate. And thirdly, if they were convinced, suffering enough, that they needed to get help, they would be a lot more likely to seek and engage wholly with that help. So, first of all, are you going to escort them to therapy? Like, how are you going to make them get treatment? If so, if you honestly were like, yeah, I will chauffeur them to therapy and make sure that they go each week, this is already too codependent to continue. Just stop there. A lot of other things are going on. Second of all, maybe they do attend, but that doesn't mean they disclose honestly or really participate in the therapy. You can lead a fucker to water, but you can't make them speak about their childhood or modern day relationship issues. Also, you may have heard of rock bottom or the necessity to suffer enough in order to change. Until we hit that point of desperation and decide to seek solutions ourselves, change just probably isn't really going to happen. Plus, they might not be ready to deal with their trauma. Let's talk about how this can be dangerous, right? Maybe they're not in the mindset where they can do this work. Perhaps, for instance, they don't feel safe or stable enough for that work right now because their relationship is plummeting. So, forcing them into it could cause them to completely collapse. It's not like we go to treatment and suddenly we're fixed. It's actually a lot of opening of wounds, which requires us to be in circumstances where we can deal with those wounds rather than those wounds compounding on things that are already rather fucked in our modern day life. Also, another way it can be dangerous, you don't force people into therapy. Let me tell you, they learn to manipulate others and enable themselves more effectively when we do this. With the weaponized education and psychobabble and therapist validation that can be gained there. Just because they're going doesn't mean they have good intentions. All right. I.e., narcissists and victim mentalities can often get worse in therapy. So the point here is that you cannot make anyone get psychological help or to utilize that resource for good. Ask any addict. But number two, you can't make anyone do anything. It is completely ineffectual to take this approach. It is also going to trigger a traumatized human if you're trying to force them into something they don't want to do. And it will create resentment in your relationship, even if you did manage to convince them to do what you wanted them to. It's not going to improve things. Uh, this is not how healthy relationships work. It also indicates this fix it for me fast mentality, right? How do I get them to go to treatment so then our relationship issues are resolved? By saying they are the problem, how do I make them fix the problem? Then I will have no concerns. it's pretty unrealistic. Life rarely has quick fixes, and brains never have quick fixes. I'm really sorry to tell you that. It's also, I'm sorry, it is abusive. You can only control your own behaviors, period. See recent public episode available to everyone. Just subscribe for free and find it. What is abuse in 2024? This is exactly what we discuss. So, to finally answer your question, what can you do to improve the situation? Since I just gave you a whole bunch of noopes, you can only control your own actions, right? We covered that. You almost certainly have unhealed trauma, okay? And it is two untreated trauma brains bumping up against each other that is creating the discourse. So you can go to therapy for trauma treatment and work on your own relationship behaviors. That's it. That is what you can do. But this is not like a blowing you off answer. I'm not trying to teach you a lesson for asking the wrong question. There are real reasons why this actually is the only approach that will help. But I know that it's not what you want to hear. Again, I truly am sorry to be the bearer of this very unfortunate news. It is going to take longer than you wish. It does put balls in your court that you were not asking for. It's going to require healthy detachment from relational outcomes and the desire to control them. And yeah, it is harder at face value, but it is the only actual solution in the long run. And I guarantee that you'll find out that any other way you try to approach this is going to be an absolute misery factory for an undefined amount of time, slash, it could be kind of the defining event of your entire life if you try to do this a different way. Okay. So, all disappointment and frustration fully acknowledged. Fuck me. I know. I hear you. I'm with you. Let's talk about why this is actually the only effective resolution. Number one, as you learn and change, you will alter the currently triggering relationship dynamic that is not working, decreasing the problems and increasing mutual sense of safety. And this is more than half of the trauma brain battle. Your partner probably feels unsafe in the relationship, so therefore, working on the relationship is not possible. So, by doing this, you won't be so at odds with each other anymore via these mutual unconscious trauma processes that have been going on. At least one of you will have some healing under their belt, which offers the opportunity for healing to the other person. Number two, you will bring trauma and trauma therapy into the relationship zeitgeist, destigmatizing the idea and the process for your partner. Saying, you have trauma, you need to work on it, is very accusatory and stigmatizing, right? Your trauma is the problem. That's not a great way to encourage them to get started. But saying, I have trauma and I'm working on it is brave. It is specific. It's being very accountable, saying, I think this is a thing about me. And it's also mind opening. Like, I have identified this in myself. I am going to go work on it. That's an invitation to another person to just start considering the same thing for themselves. Also, beginning to bring language around trauma issues into the relationship dynamic is going to pave the way for your partner to identify commonalities between you. So then they might become more aware of their own trauma and, again, the specific verbiage that's used to describe it and the ways to deal with it. It's also going to demonstrate to them that it's not such a huge deal. We are all traumatized in some way. It's not a damning diagnosis, and they don't need to be too ashamed to take action. Just figure everyone's got some trauma, honestly, and we're just working out the bugs. It'll be a lot more obvious to them if you go ahead and start first. It'll also demonstrate to them you're not the problem. I don't think you're broken. I see that I have my own issues too, and there is help available slash change is possible. Hell, you might even bring some enjoyment and satisfaction home from your therapy appointments to, again, destigmatize the whole process and show that it's not a horrible thing to do. Thirdly, you'll demonstrate the benefits of treatment, genuine change, relief, growth that will make your partner curious and potentially inspired to join in. You know what doesn't fucking work? It's telling people to get better. You know what does work? It's showing people that getting better is possible. Self improvement and change are possible. You can do it. You can show them it is not torturous. And you can also show them that the results are absolutely life changing. And as you change, they will see and probably feel the effects. Your relationships will improve all around. Your health will probably be able to improve. Your moods, outlook, esteem, interest in life, a million other things will possibly change. And of course, your relationship with this person in particular will change for the better. Even if they don't change at all, your ability to work with them and see things clearly in the relationship will. And that might inspire them to step up to the plate with you. So, again, what can you do? Honestly, you can go to therapy for trauma treatment yourself and work on your own relationship behaviors. That's it. As you learn and change, you'll alter the currently triggering relationship dynamic. You'll bring trauma and therapy into the relationship zeitgeist, destigmatizing both for the partner. And you'll demonstrate with your own change the benefits of treatment, which again is inspirational and invites people to come along. Number 4, I do have to say, you might find out that you were accidentally doing some effed up S, which it's hard. It's a hard conclusion to come to. So have self compassion. Realize it's not that unusual. This happens. But whether the relationship improves or ends, it will make you a better person and partner for whatever comes next, even if you make those hard discoveries. At least you'll have clarity and you've put in the effort yourself to make the best decisions possible moving forth. So, I have to just address this. The most difficult part of all of this, besides everything I just said being a little stingy and sucky, is that you can only focus on what you can control in yourself, and you have to let the rest of the pieces fall where they may. So, I mean, letting go of controlling your partner or the relational outcome. And that requires acknowledging This might be a really long time sitting with discomfort and putting in extra effort before anything really changes in the relationship. Also, change has to start somewhere, and you have to be willing to take on that responsibility for the both of you. But you also need to realize I can't stop this from ending, even if I give it my all. If they aren't willing to meet me along the way, something's going to happen. It might turn out that it's best for everyone to go separate ways. And you need to recognize that I need to be okay with myself to allow them to also be autonomous. But if you can take on the challenge, take control of your own brain, acknowledge that you're also not 100% clear on the contents of that fat sack slash your relational patterns contained within. If you're willing to do the work daily and offer them the grace to come to the same conclusions for themselves, and then work together mindfully over long periods of time, you can both heal yourselves and the relationship. And really, I have to say, it's not asking that much because this is exactly what you're asking of them with the original question: how do I get my partner to seek treatment? So if you're not willing to put in the same work that you want from them, probably says a lot of things, and you might want to take that one to therapy before you start pointing the finger. But in conclusion, to the question, I think my partner has CPTSD and it's ruining our relationship. How do I get them to seek treatment? The answer is, if you are not in danger, an important caveat, then all you can do is to seek answers and healing within yourself, and the relationship will necessarily change as you do, which will help your partner massively in their own recovery plight. But you can't force any of it, and you will have to be the one to start the process. Because, number one, trauma histories flock together. Number two, there is not one problem party in a relationship. And most of all, number three, you cannot control anyone else's behaviors, but you can be a positive example, source of support, source of healing, and inspiration. Sorry again for all of the bad news and the very long-term suggestions, but I hope that this helps. And we wish you mutual health and healing. P.S. Holler if you need anything. If you've got lingering cues, we're here for it. Sorry again that my answer was probably not the one that you were seeking. I hope that this has been an assistance to someone out there. If you've got questions or comments, you know where to put them. And until we speak again next time, hail yourself, hail relationship realities on Trauma Brains. And cheers, y'all. I'll talk to you real soon. Bye bye.